Hey, everybody. This is a conversation between myself and Ben Goodrum, who is an emotional fitness coach. And he runs a group on Facebook called Emotional Skills and Knowledge for Already Emotionally Intelligent People. And so I reached out to Ben because I was just really interested in what does he do, right, as an emotional fitness coach? And how does he work with people? And so we just had this sort of easy conversation about what he does and how he works, and then a little bit of cross pollination of what I do. I'm a creativity coach, and you'll see. So I wanted to introduce Ben. So it's Ben Sean Goodrum, and he is on Facebook. And we're going to dive into the conversation here. So check it out. Yeah, just describe to me like how you work with what's the tool to work with those inner little machinations of the emotions that you want to clear.
So the tool is well, there are a few, but there's the one particular one that I use most in my sessions is called acknowledge and let go,
Mm,
and it is, as it sounds, it's about acknowledging and letting go of
mhm,
of your feelings,
mhm,
and you start it by kind of you take yourself into like a meditative place through a meditation,
mhm.
and another tool which is kind of a separate tool but used with this one called pause, breathe, kind eyes. um, and it's again, it's what it says on the tin. It's about pausing where you are right now,
Mhm,
where you are in your thinking and feeling, and
mhm,
taking a deep breath
mhm.
and imagining having kind eyes towards yourself.
Oh, kind
And
eyes. Oh,
kind eyes, yeah,
kind
yeah.
eyes. Nice.
And I think that tool was developed by this guy called William Bloom. I don't know if you've heard of him,
Oh,
but that's one of the places that came from.
yeah.
um, and that what that does is really powerful. It's funny coming into this stuff, it where it sounds, and sometimes the descriptions to someone who's new to it, it
Mm,
sounds quite soft and quite or hard to grasp. But when you do it, it's like, oh my god, this has a
mm,
truly practical application that I can feel right away. And when you do the pause, breathe, kind eyes,
hmm.
it instantly gives you emotional space. And sometimes that in itself, especially when I guide someone through it in the particular way that I do, which takes a little time with using that exercise,
Mhm.
um, it can be a transformative space in itself. And
Interesting.
yeah,
It's like it's fascinating to see what helps people like all of us
mm,
to have that, just like you said, transformative moment, right? And
yeah,
sometimes it is that simple. You
yeah,
know, we have to pause and really like acknowledge and let go. Though sometimes I know for myself, I find it hard to let go.
yeah. So much so. This is why this tool is particularly good, because it takes you through the these steps of a process where
Mm,
it really works. And what I do is I teach my clients to do this, or I do this for my clients
mm,
in sessions,
mhm.
and then they can take it away and do it themselves.
Oh,
Um, I would be interested to know if anyone can do it from just the description, from me giving a description. I suspect that they could, but
mhm.
I don't know if anyone's done it yet and come back to me and said, "Oh, I did that thing you described and I did it and it worked." Most of the time, gone.
Well, no, it'd be an interesting test, I think,
Yes, I
It's
think
sort
so.
of like, what it comes to me is having a moment of live Facebook feed where you're like,
Mm,
okay, come with something that's been bothering you, or if you like, this is what we're gonna do in this moment for X amount of time.
mm,
If you're working with something, like come and see. And you could walk people through it and just and then you want the feedback, ask
yeah,
for feedback. That's I don't know, this idea just popped to me.
that could be that could be a good idea. Well, that is a good idea. I've I know that. So I think my coach is Terry and Jay Brightwater are the names.
Mhm,
They may have done that in a group setting before. I've personally never done it in a group setting, although I'm sure it could work.
mhm,
I've just never tried it. And I think one of the reasons is that people go so incredibly deep on when we do the one-on-one session. I
Mhm.
don't know yet how I could do that with lots of people, but I suppose it's going to be because it's going to be less specific, actually, would be
Right.
the answer to that. Um,
It might be just making a little bit of space
yeah,
for themselves. I mean,
yeah,
I know, I mean, just last week I had a massive meltdown.
yeah,
It was like, oh my God. And,
yeah,
and you know, when we're in the drama, it's kind of intense. It doesn't happen that often, but you know, this major meltdown,
mm,
and you really do need the space and like
right,
and kind of to remember like, okay, everything right now is okay.
yeah,
Everything is literally like I'm breathing, I'm alive, I have shelter, and it,
mm,
you know, things very basic.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
do
absolutely.
you mainly work one-on-one with your clients?
Yeah, I do.
Mhm.
Exclusively, actually, just one-on-one. Yeah,
You. And
yeah.
do you do sessions, or do you just, you know, it's like, oh, we're gonna work together for 6 weeks or period of
Yeah,
time?
so I do like I do a 6 month at the moment. I've got a 6 month coaching program,
Oh, okay.
and
Mhm,
it's called Find Your Spark.
mhm,
And the idea is that you're finding your spark through understanding how you feel, which is the most it's like the most common. So many things come from doing like so many ripple effects into so many parts of people's lives. But
right.
the best description I had from it was from somebody who started the program when it was a shorter version, saying, I want to find my spark. I've just lost that spark and I
Mhm,
want to find it.
mhm.
And by the end she was like, I have found my spark. And I just thought,
Oh,
that's a lovely little, that works. And that's a
yeah.
right.
That's really nice. It's true. It's
Yeah.
sort of like it's hard to describe what is our spark, you know?
Mm,
Oh,
mm,
yeah. Wow. So, and this
yeah.
group that you have, the emotional
Yeah.
intelligent, what's the name of it exactly?
Um, Emotional skills and knowledge for
That,
already emotionally intelligent people.
okay. I really liked that.
I love that you love that. I love that you love that.
I really liked that because I felt like it's like, okay, I like for me, I'm someone who identifies as pretty emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
And I've already done a lot of work and I have lots of tools. But, you know, it's always great to keep building skills and also just to meet other people who are
Yeah.
feeling like, oh, I want to live an emotionally intelligent life, you know,
Yeah.
and connect with them.
And,
Yeah.
and I think like you can see already in the group that everyone who's commenting,
Mm,
like most people are really like quite knowledgeable, or they already seem to have
mhm,
a practice in place and
mhm.
have done a lot of work on themselves. And I've kind of realized over time that it would be super valuable to build a group of people, like a group of, yeah, with people like that in it. And at the same time, everyone's welcome, you know.
Yeah, no, it's great. So how long have you had your group?
Um, Not so. Do you know what? Actually, it's probably been a year.
Hmm.
What's the date? It's the day we're in July. It will have been a year at least.
Okay. Yeah.
But I've only been kind of really putting myself into it in the last maybe 5 or 6 months, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And like, because I started my own group recently. It's
Oh, cool.
the Inspired Creative, and it's
Yeah.
about unlocking the wisdom within
Okay.
through the creative process. Because that's kind of mainly my tool bag is creativity, and which you know I can talk to you about later.
Excellent.
But it's interesting to be the person who's guiding the group and offering things. And I, you know, I'm sort of curious what you feel is valuable in terms of what you share, and how you kind of stimulate the group to collectively share together, you know?
Yeah. Is there a specific question? I'm in there somewhere. Like I feel.
Right, it's a little vague, isn't it? It's kind of like how, you know, so I've been a teacher and a facilitator for a long time. And in person, I feel like, oh, there's a whole vibe, but like on the internet and in a group, it's a different
Mm,
thing to kind of stimulate people to be actively engaged, not just with what I post, but with each other.
mm,
And I'm sort of curious, I guess the question is, what do you find has worked for you to help the group grow and um, to have it be beneficial to people? Like, do you feel like it's your posts that you share, or is it
Mm.
bringing in other people or asking questions of the group, that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely questions. So like simple questions.
Hmm.
Um, really, that some people that sometimes the recent one that I put in was do you set goals, which I just thought was really
Oh
simple. People can just say yes or no,
yeah.
and they can also, if they want, they can give a reason why they do or why not, and then you can just get into a little discussion about that in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it's really important to have those kinds of conversations.
Hmm.
Um, but asking a really simple, quick question
Hmm.
it is the most engaging thing for a group.
Simple. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. I tend
yeah,
to ask complicated questions.
yeah.
Like you noticed, you're like, I know there's a question in there.
Yes, yes.
You know?
But it's well, but it's already good to have that impetus to ask a question,
Yeah, yeah, totally.
rather than just putting out, like, say, your knowledge, which is also
Right.
valuable and a
Right.
valid thing to do.
Yeah, I've been thinking about, like in my group, the inspired creative. Like one of the things that is inspiring for me is that I have these two dogs, and they get me out to nature all the time.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
they inspire me to get out of my own little abode in my art studio and just go exploring. So I did post that. I was like, okay, do you have a furry family member? And like introduce your furry family member. And people are actually
that's
doing that. It's kind of sweet because it's
brilliant.
like, oh,
Yeah,
it's my cat,
yeah,
my dog, somebody has a bunny.
yes. Oh, that's nice. That's a good. Yeah, that's a
you
good thing to
know.
do. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious if you know, like, do you have other musicians and artists and creatives in your group? Do you know?
Oh, I don't. Do you know what? I don't really know actually. I think it's very likely.
Because yeah, I just wonder because especially your background, being
Mm.
being a pianist and a break dancer. Have you gotten back to your break dancing?
I um I haven't lately because what happened kind of last year, I started doing more of it. I was doing it kind of every day almost,
Mm,
and the injury kind of surfaced a bit more,
wow.
and so I decided just to take a break from that. I don't
Hmm.
know how long that break's going to be, but I hope I'm going to be able to get back to it. I might pivot into a different kind of dance, you
Wow.
know, because
So is
obviously
it a
break
lot?
dancing,
It's like
yeah,
break dance. It's a lot on the wrists, isn't it?
a lot on the hands, it's a lot on the wrists, a
Yeah.
lot of weight. So
Yeah. Wow.
we'll see what
Well, I have
happens
to
there.
say, like this, what you've put together with the, I really like emotional fitness too. Given that fitness kind of it implies the body, and
Exactly.
right,
Yeah.
it implies the body, and that you're helping people connect through the body to their emotional intelligence. I So I'll just share a little bit about me.
Yeah. Please. Yeah.
I've taught yoga for over 20 years. And I feel like the yoga practice, and I'm also a dancer and a writer and an artist. I couldn't decide on the creative arts, so I just did all.
Right. Right. Brilliant.
So for years I was like, oh, you need to choose, and then I'm like, no, 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 I'm just gonna do them all. But
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
yoga really, yoga means to yoke together mind, body, heart.
Mm.
And so what I noticed, and actually my deep connection to yoga became after a massive car accident. I
Oh
was
wow.
hit as a pedestrian by a car and thrown like 40 feet. And
God.
I, broke my leg, and it was about 21 years ago. But that accident got me deeply into yoga, and then yoga has been this really healing, integrating force. And
Yeah.
just like you're saying, it has been the way through the body back to integrating the feelings and then working with the mind. And
Mm.
so um, so my own practice of working with people is I teach creative process. And
Okay.
yeah, and I teach this journaling practice, Ben, that is,
Yeah.
it's like this way of,
Brilliant.
um, it's really fun. I have to show you one piece that I've just been like, I just love like the scribbling and the writing,
Excellent. Yeah.
right? And the drawing. And there's
Yeah.
one more I'm going to show you just because it's kind of fun. Like here's just like the garden and the coffee cup and
Oh,
just kind of
that's
play and
lovely.
scribble. But what I notice is like you, there's this integration because of I have people move their bodies. I have
Mm.
them work with writing. So this is the mind. And then the visual art, which is I think of as the emotions and the heart. So it's mind, body, heart in this creative process. And it's
Yeah.
been really fun to, I mean, I've developed it over all these years. And all these years I was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I keep doing these three different things, but it's
Yeah.
integrated and really transformative in its own way. Just so I feel like we have sort of this commonality
Totally.
in a different way.
Yeah.
And what I notice for people, so how I broke it down with creative process immersion is I
Mm.
studied my process, right? Creative
Mm.
process. And I bet as a
Mhm.
dancer and a musician, check it out. The 7 pillars of creative process for me have
Mhm.
been starting with play, then curiosity, then experimentation, then risk taking, discovery, surrender, because once you discover something, your data is different, so you have to surrender to that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then it's personal empowerment because it's your own unique thing.
Yeah.
And that applies to anything, not just the arts, but like any process that we're
Yeah.
creatively figuring out. It might be building a bridge, or might be coming up with a new piano piece, or a new course, but like those elements. And so it's been really fun to teach and to synthesize. So I just thought, oh, it'd be fun to connect with you and just see um,
Mm.
what each of us does, really.
Yeah. That's brilliant. And I'm obviously also really interested in the creative process. Like
Right.
and I I do resonate with those pillars that you spoke about. And
Hmm.
I'm always thinking about, because I've done a lot of more different things. I also have been really into art and drawing as well.
Huh.
And
Wow.
yeah, yeah, right. So
That's
all of
interesting. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. And
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I think I wanted to be an author as well. Like when I was a teenager, I
Oh,
always thought it would be able to be a
interesting.
writer. Yeah.
Huh.
Um, and so I'm always thinking about guiding principles of what works
Hmm.
in this creative process, me playing the piano. How can I bring that to dancing or writing or art? Or because
Right.
there are like you just said, there are principles that if
Yeah.
it's a good principle, it'll work across everything.
Okay, and that's exactly what I think. And I mean, there are theories about creative process, you know,
Mm,
and I know they exist, but I didn't like I just studied my own process.
right.
Like I can tell you're that kind of person too. It's like, oh, you study your own
100%.
process.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Because it's like, well, what's happening here? But so those stand for you, right? Play, curiosity, because right, it's like, well, we start like if you think about kids, right? They start by
Mm, yeah.
like, oh, well, what are you curious about? And the curiosity is going to lead you to experiment, and then
Yeah.
that's going to lead you to take a risk, and then oh, in that risk you make a discovery. I mean, so many people, and in teaching it, it's interesting because this is where people they get caught in, oh, they're too afraid to take the risk and
Hmm.
they don't want to fail, but it's
Yeah.
inherent that you have to fail
Yeah.
over and over and over and over and over, right? You have to
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make the discovery. And
Right.
then the surrender, like, oh, now I've made a discovery. Like I'm sure you've made discoveries in your breakdancing and your own process.
So much. Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I mean, just the fact that you got injured then turned you towards a different path.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe I became a better musician without question because of it.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, because I had to tune into, and I feel like um every kind of great person who's done anything has some kind of a, I say, yeah, yeah, I can say that, who has had some kind of a breakdown, almost like where there's like being like, I had this moment where
Yeah.
I could no longer do what I wanted to do, and I had to rebuild myself to and then when you have to do that, when you've learned it to maybe quite a high level, and then you have to stop and do it differently, you really have to break down what
Mhm.
are the fundamental parts of my own creative process that make this work for me. You
Totally.
know?
Totally.
Yeah.
So, and just the fact that you're, and I, I feel this way too. I'm imagining as a um, creative from a young age, like there's
Mm,
already kind of a higher sensitivity to just input, and like that higher sensitivity of feeling, basically of feeling
yeah.
life, and
Mm.
then transforming it into something, movement, music, song, writing, whatever. Yeah.
And there's something that I wanted to add as well from what you were saying
Mm.
around just with like integrating everything,
Hmm.
is that I think that this stuff makes you cleverer, and
Hmm.
and there's this, I don't know, this narrative around, it's like it's mind or emotions. It's like, and you're either in your head or you're in your heart. But
Yes.
right, but it's like I think that I ever since really diving into understanding my emotions, and part of a creative process for me sometimes
Mm.
is me just feeling into things, and then when I feel into something, I can articulate it
Mhm.
logically in a way that I couldn't before. And it's not so much it's either or, it's both of them together will create something so much bigger and better.
Both and.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I mean, like, if we think about it, right? If
yeah.
we make a decision, like, okay, let's just go to love as an example,
Mm, mm,
because in love, there's body, heart, mind. There's the
yeah,
physical attraction, there's the emotional attraction, and then there's the intellectual attraction. And in my life, I've noticed I always have the heart because I'm a heart person, but
yeah,
I've often had the physical and the heart, or the intellect and the heart. But really, you have to have all three for it to be lasting. I mean,
yeah,
that's my philosophy about it. And
mm,
I think that's what we're all really ultimately wanting for ourselves, is that full
yeah.
integration of like feeling good in this body, having the juice of our own mind, and like the guidance of our heart. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do I do agree with those things actually, heart, physical, and intellectual.
Right.
You know,
Body, heart, mind.
yeah,
It's very yogic. I mean,
yeah,
in that particular system.
yeah,
And what a practice, right?
yeah.
So I just want to circle back to you being a man doing this work with people. And
Mm.
I'm curious, I do want to ask you, like, do you find, what's the percentage of clients who are men versus women, or you,
So it does tend to be more women who do the
more
work.
women?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I found that, I don't know about you as well. You, in your work and asking other coaches and knowing other coaches, I imagine you kind of know other coaches and facilitators and things. But uh,
Yeah.
I find that most other facilitators and coaches find that their work is mostly women
Mostly women.
who do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I really like coaching men because for the reasons that you said at the beginning. You
Well,
know?
and I think I think that we're in a collective time
Yeah.
where the masculine and the feminine, like if we think about men and women, like we both have, like, each gender has both the masculine and the feminine, and we
Yeah.
each embody the masculine and the feminine within.
Mm,
And this, and the world has been very patriarchally dominated in the last centuries, and the
yeah.
feminine really is kind of rising.
Mm.
And for men in particular to embody the feminine without losing the masculine, right,
Right.
is,
Right.
I think it's so important. Like women have definitely driven the shift of consciousness,
Mm.
but I feel like, oh, the more men who do this kind of work and keep that strong masculine,
Yeah.
it's so empowering. And then women embodying their own empowerment and the masculine,
Yeah.
and owning their power, which I think is where women fall short. They tend to collapse sometimes in the face
Mm. Mm.
of the world. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. Wow. Well, yeah. You go. I
I'm
get.
just wondering, can we sometimes something I sometimes do is just to like tune in and just pause and have a little meditation. Just sometimes in the middle of a conversation, I think it'd be really
Okay.
good for us to do here. I know
Okay.
it'd be good for me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, let's go. Just like a couple of minutes or something. That's one of my favorite things to do with people,
Mhm.
actually.
Mm, that was.
I actually, yeah, elaborate on that. How was that? Say more if you'd like about how that was.
Yeah, I think what happened for me is it helped me ground. You know,
Yeah.
I think sometimes I get really excited in my head and get kind of overly stimulated, and then it's like that just really helped me settle and come back to my feet and my breath and presence and a little calm. Yeah, spacious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
Nice. So
thank you.
yeah, really very welcome. And I find the same thing, and especially I find if I'm well, I do that nearly every time now that I speak to somebody, especially for the first time. And
Mm,
it's not, I don't even plan it. I just realize, yeah, I think I feel like it'd be really good to have a
mhm.
meditation.
Yeah.
And for me, like I was feeling and it's completely gone now. It's nearly completely gone. I was feeling a slight self awareness
Mm,
of because we're recording, and this is completely fine by the way, because I even thought like you're even reflecting my own thoughts about recording it. I've thought this before, but there's slight self-awareness of being recorded, and so um just being more aware of what I'm saying and the fact that, oh, maybe this could be used for this or that, and it just made me be not as much out for myself as I could be, even though I was being.
mhm,
um and it helped me to bring presence to that, and I thought immediately, oh, like I want to just say that to bring
mm,
you know consciousness to it.
mhm, mm.
um yeah.
Yeah, nice. I mean, right there to me, it touches on how do we stay authentic, right? And
Yeah.
real with ourselves and each other, whether or not we're recorded, like even if we're just with another person.
Mm.
I notice I live alone and I have a garden and my art studio and my dogs and like everything's hunky dory because it's like, oh, I live alone and it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, it's more in the face of being with other people that there's, either ease because of how we bump up against each other or dissonance.
Yeah.
And then, do I unconsciously change myself to accommodate,
Mm.
which sort of has, this little insidious place of not being myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I thought about this. So, I teach yoga still. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I've got this sort of bra strappy thing going on. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's not my perfect little presented outfit. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
these little interesting thoughts. Yeah. Wow, Ben, it's nice to meet you. I would love to just, I don't know, continue the conversation and maybe
Yeah.
maybe there's a way to play together with with our people. And I don't know. I'm just, I know for myself, and I feel this from you. Um, I just feel I'm here of service for in the world with what I
Mm,
do.
mm,
And just offering little bits of my hope is to support people to come to their own joy, to find their own
yeah,
joy, follow their own joy.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
sounds good. So I had a thought question as well. So I want to say as well. So yeah, I also do that meditation thing. I do that with my friends in real time as well. So
Oh,
so I do that.
nice.
Sure, I do that on dates. I do it on dates.
Do
I go
you?
on dates and I do that.
Hey, that's cool.
And seriously,
Wow.
it's like a super. Nearly every single time, it's a super powerful thing to do. It
Wow.
like it brings because it's
Hmm.
you're meeting someone for the first time, a bit like we're meeting for the first time, and whenever you're meeting somebody for the first time, anybody, whether it's like romantic or not, there
Yeah.
is this kind of heightened, like
Yes.
interest and what's going on,
Uh,
um and
huh.
I find nearly every single time it has such a powerful impact. Because you are on a first date, you do have those heightened emotions, and I find it brings us both down every single time. But it's usually after, because we're talking about each other and our life and work. I've talked about a little bit of what I do, so there's actually context for it as
Mhm,
well.
mhm.
But I I'm sure there's been a time where it's been a bit awkward and maybe it's like she hasn't been too into it, but 90% of the time, it's
Wow.
it's been like it's made us both go boom. It's just really grounded
Yeah.
both of us, and just made the
Huh.
conversation after, or like the quality of whatever we're talking about after that, just more grounded, really easy.
You know what? I bet.
Yeah.
Good for you. And like I'm telling you, you have an advantage as a man,
Thank-
seriously, who is highly emotionally intelligent. It's like,
mm,
you know, that's lovely. That's really,
yeah,
I'm gonna
thank you.
do that.
Do it, please do it, and do it and tell me like how it goes.
Yeah, I
Tell me how
will.
it goes.
Because I'm like,
Uh,
yeah. Hmm. All right, so here's a question, and
Okay.
maybe this could be a coaching question that I'd be curious what you think. So let's say you have, I'll just take a real example. Let's say
Yeah.
you have a friend who you have a
Yeah.
little who's like, I have this male friend who it's a little awkward with, and it's sort of like, what's the relationship? And there's been a little passive aggressive energy, or at least I felt a little passive aggressive energy from him to me. And so instead of acknowledging it and confronting it or saying anything, I pulled back, right? I just sort of have retreated. I'm like, no, I don't like
Yeah.
that energy. So I'm just curious how you would work with someone who's a little passive aggressive towards you, because I've been chewing on this, like, because I don't want to let the friendship go, but I also
Yeah.
know this way of being doesn't work for me you know
I was thinking, I was going to ask, actually, the first thing would be like, do I want this relationship in my life, like, to begin with? That
Right,
would be the first question.
right.
And I would work with somebody, with actually the acknowledge and let go, that I didn't actually completely finish that process. We spoke about but it's okay. We spoke about the observing part of that. Um,
Right.
and then there's an acknowledge and let go process that comes after that. So I would work with somebody with acknowledging and letting go, understanding how they're feeling, and I could actually go through almost an example of how that could go.
Mhm.
Um, but I suppose if I was going to do something, like, I could say, while I'm with that person, I could do the thing where I say, "Hey, can you just give me a few seconds? I just need to feel into, how I'm feeling. I just need to take a few moments. It would be really helpful for me. It would, so that I could, you know, figure out what I need to say to you, figure out what I want to say to you."
Yeah.
And um, I've done this before,
Mhm.
and it literally creates space within me in the moment for me to realize whatever my truth is, because when we're like afraid of how this person will react,
Mhm.
we're afraid of the consequences of what we might say. You know,
Mhm.
we make ourselves smaller,
Mhm.
and we don't say what the truth is for fear of what the
Mhm.
consequences are.
Yes.
And sometimes we pretend to ourselves that our truth is slightly different so that we can accommodate the other person,
Totally.
right?
Totally. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying at the crux of this is that we have to make space for ourselves to feel our feelings,
Yes, that's
right?
exactly it. I love
Like,
that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Because if I don't have space for myself to feel my feelings, then I can't move forward to articulate the feelings because I don't even
Yeah.
know how I'm feeling. And I'm in that contracted place. I know exactly what you mean. Contracted, where I'm making myself smaller to accommodate. I've spent most of my life this way.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, like a good chunk of it, and
Yeah.
working my way out of it to accommodate that person. But then you start to feel the tightness, which starts to feel like resentment.
Yes.
And
Yes.
resentment is like it's pursed. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
Wow.
this guy.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
a guy particularly who talks about that. I don't know how you feel about him because he's a bit of a controversial figure. Jordan Peterson.
Oh, I've heard of him. I don't know. I mean, I have heard he's controversial. I don't really know
Yeah.
his work that much. I should
He
write him.
talks about like resentment and conflicts, and he says that he talks about not leaving conflicts and
Mm,
not letting it fester, because unresolved conflict is like will fester into resentment, and it's worse, and it ends up being worse than the original conflict itself. And he talks about facing it just as soon as you can.
yeah.
um you know.
I need to clean some of that up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that we're all guilty of some of that, you know.
Mm, yeah.
um yeah. And to go back to that as well, creating that space in that moment to say, hey, can I take a few moments to do it?
Mm,
Just taking the space and giving yourself the space to feel the feelings,
mhm.
also that doing that for yourself also gives you the courage, because it's like you realize your truth on such a true level. It's like, oh yeah, this is actually definitely my truth.
Mhm.
And then it kind of gives you the courage to say to the person, this is how I feel in this situation, or this is how this is making me feel.
Yeah.
Another great caveat to offer is, I'm not saying that what I feel is objective truth, and it means that you're doing something wrong, but it means that this is how I feel. And sometimes that they can actually correct a reality. Sometimes maybe you're feeling it
Mhm.
because of because you've perceived something maybe incorrectly, yeah.
True.
And they can then correct you in this, and when I say correct you, I mean that in the subjective sense. Like, they can be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that, or I hadn't realized that I was doing that. And
Mhm.
then it means that they can show their intention far more clearly.
Mhm. Yeah, so that our own misinterpretation that we're projecting
Yeah.
to them isn't the
Yeah.
isn't our real story. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So last thing. So because this is really good. This is like a little
Cool.
gold that you're giving people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think you can do that effectively over the phone?
Yeah, I do actually.
Oh, you do?
You mean doing that process that I just
Yeah,
spoke
like,
about over the
oh, I need
phone?
to pause for a moment and take a moment.
Yes, I mean, for one thing, we just did it in some way. We
Well,
took a pause, right, and it kind of had, we're not in conflict, but it had an impact.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I've definitely done it over the phone, um, many times, probably. Yeah, many times, and it works.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so listen, thank you. I feel like you just gave me a little piece of gold. So
Yeah.
I want to
Welcome.
give you something too. So
Cool.
because I'm like, oh, okay. So one of the things that I have really found. So first of all, just thank you. Like that is super helpful, and I'm going to practice it, and I'm gonna report in back
You're going to what? Sorry, you're going to.
report in back to you.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent. Look forward to it.
report back.
Yeah.
Um, so on my end, one of the things that I have really found in my journaling process, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's something about, I just want to go back to this page. So here's another one. So what I tend to do is like I'll write out whatever it is that I'm feeling or whatever. But then in the journal process, often,
Hmm.
it's like, oh, I don't really want to expose that. I don't want that read ever. I don't really want it available. So this
Yeah.
act of scribbling and doodling and scribbling is like, even if people just scribble, like you just take a piece of paper, you get out your pen, and you just are doodling and scribbling, there is something that happens with the sympathetic nervous system in the act of scribbling. Like it's really soothing to the
Mm.
parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. But there is something extremely powerful if we write down our thoughts and then kind of even just scribble over them as
Yeah.
an act of getting things out and having the safety that nobody's going to be able to read those.
Yeah.
So it's just a little tool.
Interesting. I like it.
Yeah, and I'm actually gonna do a post in my own group about the impact of doodling and scribbling because
Yeah.
it seems like this really silly thing, but look at how kids do it, right?
Mm.
They
Hmm.
naturally scribble, and sometimes
Mm.
they're like, and they're kind of getting
Yeah.
stuff out,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what it does. It gets it out of our bodies and
Mm.
into some other form so that we can kind of find the calm again in the body.
I love that, and I can totally see how that works. And I liked your explanation as well about how it basically there's something in the action of the scribbling that regulates your nervous
Yes,
system.
it
Right?
regulates. That's what it is. It regulates the nervous system.
That's
So
great because also people do have that fear. I personally don't have it. I don't know why I don't have it, but when I talk to people about journaling, I know people really do have that very real fear that it's going to be read. That there's that small
yes,
chance that someone's going to read it. You
yes.
know?
Well, and you know what? I this is a so I'm just gonna show you another one.
Please do, please do.
Because the reason is, so this is a different kind, but it's again like I wrote. I don't know if you can see way under there, but there's words under the paint.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
teach this process I kind of came up with where we write down and then we gesso over it and then we do other things on top of it. And then you can see, like, I actually wanted to keep a little bit of the information. So I have a few
Mm,
words that I pulled
mm,
forward from, like this says full moon meltdown. I'm like, oh, okay. But I didn't have to leave all
yeah.
the information.
Mm,
So that is really real because people have been betrayed by parents, sisters, brothers who read their journals. And it's
yeah,
like, I'm not going to write anything down. But this process, oh my God, it's so fun. It's so liberating. Like
yeah,
that's part of, like, I'm an avid proponent of journaling, but in this way that I teach it where you don't feel so vulnerable,
yeah.
you know? So
I can see that it's it's a very integrated, holistic process that you've got there.
totally. Very holistic. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you to write that down. Integrative and holistic. Yes.
Sometimes it's useful to hear someone else describe our stuff, isn't it?
It totally
Yeah,
is. Yeah, I'm gonna write it
yeah.
down. Wow. Well, Ben, it's really lovely to meet you and to just connect. And I'm gonna just stay connected in your group and
Thank you.
I'm gonna invite you into mine if you want to come.